How well do you really know those around you? Friends, family, loved ones, complete strangers, blue shirt, pink dress, red sweater, the gleam of shades in the night, red on steel, a body is discovered. Accusations fly, voices are raised, certain who's the one at hand. Someone dies, someone lives. We continue. The accusations will go on. Judgment will continue to be passed. The truth of who is truly sus lies among us. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's Danielle. She's been the imposter and she's been not, and she keeps voting me off the damn ship. I think I'm going to go back to play Mario Brothers. This is just completely biased. These are dark times, and these stories come from very dark places. Good evening, listeners. My name is Jonas Armitage, and you're listening to Stories from Dark Places. Tonight, I would like to give you a special thank you to all of those out there who are essential workers by the government standard. Those of you who, during the hot parts of this COVID madness, found yourselves unable to hide and sequester yourselves in safety, and instead have trudged out into everyday life, putting your health on the line to ensure that people have everything from groceries and petroleum for their vehicles to police officers, firefighters, and many medical professionals out there who are still on the front lines battling this disease and trying to keep us all alive and healthy. You are the true heroes of this modern horror story we live. So I would like to thank you from the bottom of my ectocentrifugal pump. Without your efforts, the death toll would be inexcusable, and this would be a very different type of horror story we're living. Less of a zombie pandemic and more of a hack and slash gore violence film where everyone's dead in the first 20 minutes. So thank you, and please, if you're going out there, wear a mask. Be respectful of those of us who can't make an option to be at home and away from this. A simple strip of fabric over your nose and mouth can contribute to saving someone's life. Is it certain? Sources vary. But really is a minor inconvenience so much more important than saving another human being's life. Life itself is very fragile. It can disappear with a cough, or in one's sleep, or as you will hear in tonight's story, even in a dance between two lovers. For your enjoyment tonight, I would like to submit a piece of American Gothic called The Skeleton's Waltz. In 1851, when New Mexico was still a territory and had not yet become a state, Fort Union was built 90 miles northeast of Santa Fe to protect people from Apache Indian raids. The fort helped keep the trails open so that huge, red-wheeled freight wagons, pulled by teams of mules on yokes of oxen, could bring hardware, calico, and other goods to Santa Fe, while taking furs, hides, and Mexican mules and burros back to St. Louis, Missouri. Fort Union was the only spot for miles where an effort was made to keep up the appearance of gracious social life, such as was found east of the Missouri River. There were a number of very beautiful young ladies attached to the post, and the most attractive of them all was Elizabeth Bidwell, the sister-in-law of Captain Moore. She had recently come to Fort Union to stay with her sister, the captain's wife, because their parents were dead, and the maid and aunt who had raised Elizabeth had become ill. Young Elizabeth enjoyed the excitement that came from living on an outpost, where the threat of an Indian attack lurked always in the background. She was doubly delighted by the attentions the young officers paid to her, since there were very few women who were both pretty and unmarried in the wild country. One lieutenant named Frank Sutter, recently transferred from the East, was especially attracted to Elizabeth's charms. He devoted himself to winning her hand in spite of the other handsome officers who buzzed around her like bees discovering the sweetest blossom in the garden. Frank Sutter's experience with the world was not large enough so that he could tell whether a woman was responding seriously to his attentions, or was merely flirting with him. He would walk with Elizabeth in the afternoon, when the sunny, clear air would turn in the blink of an eye to heavy rain that sent them scurrying for cover, then disappeared as quickly as it had begun to fall. They would sit together in the evening, watching the sky turn red, pink, orange, and yellow to the west, while the mountains of the east of the fort turned dark, purple, and mysterious. At such times, Frank would talk to Elizabeth about many things, but he didn't dare tell the young woman whose hand rested lightly on his arm just what he felt for her. Elizabeth laughed and fanned herself, and complained about the heat, and chatted on about how bored she was growing with life at Fort Union, and how eager she was to return to Missouri and the social life there. Such talk cut Lieutenant Sutter to the quick, but he never let his pain show. Then one day, messengers came racing to the fort with news of a series of Apache raids. Captain Moore ordered a detachment of troops to chase and punish the guilty Indians. Lieutenant Sutter was put in command of the expedition. The night before they were to set out, however, he called on Elizabeth Bidwell. Drawing her to a private corner of the porch, he dropped to his knee and said, "Elizabeth, if you didn't guess it before, I'm telling you now, I'm in love with you." She smiled at him, then turned her head away and patted her heart. Finally she said, "Why, Lieutenant Sutter, I'm overwhelmed by the honor you've given me." "And what do you have some affection for me?" "You don't even have to ask," she replied, blushing. "Then, Miss Bidwell, would you do me the honor of marrying me when I return?" He was the handsomest young officer in Fort Union, and his prospects were excellent. Elizabeth answered without thought or hesitation, "Well, of course I will." "But if the fortunes of war deprive me of life—" "Hush," she said. "Don't even think such a thing. If you should fail to return, I swear I will never marry another." "Then," he said, rising to his feet and kissing her hand, "you can be assured nobody else will have you. I will come back and make my claim." The lieutenant and his troops departed the next morning. On the evening of their second day on patrol, they overtook the band of Apaches that had gone on the warpath. In the heat of the battle, Frank Sutter became separated from the rest of his men. When the dust had settled and the Indians had scattered into the dusk, the troops searched vainly for the young lieutenant, but he had vanished. When they could turn up no trace of him, they returned to Fort Union and reported him missing in action. Other people at the fort noted, not very kindly, that Elizabeth Bidwell, Frank Sutter's bride-elect, grieved very little for the missing bridegroom-to-be. And it came as no great surprise to anyone when she announced her intention of marrying a man recently arrived from the East, who would take her back to St. Louis with him. Her sister and brother-in-law arranged a wedding for her on the post. When the big day arrived, there was a short ceremony in the chapel, and then everyone retired for the evening to the mess hall, which was decorated for a ball. Outside, a sudden thunderstorm rolled through nearby canyons and sent rain splatting against the roof and walls of the mess hall. But inside, all was festivity. There was good food, lots to drink, and loud laughter everywhere. A band was playing with more enthusiasm than tunefulness, but everyone was having a fine time. At the heart of everything was Elizabeth Bidwell, smiling and fanning herself and swirling her skirts of rose-blush pink. Suddenly, when the dance was at full swing, the outside doors of the hall slammed open with a bang, letting in a draught of air that made the candles gutter and burn low. A blood-curdling cry, neither human nor like any other bird or creature anyone could name, echoed through the common room, carried on the invading wind. All eyes turned to the open doorway. Framed by the doorpost was the body of a dead man, dressed in the stained uniform of a cavalry officer. Across his forehead was a gash left by a tomahawk. His eyes were wide and burned with a fiery light. As everyone retreated to the edge of the dance floor, the horrible apparition walked across the floor to the new bride and pulled her from the arms of her husband. Like the rest of the company, she stood gaping, too shocked to move. The corpse led Elizabeth to the center of the floor, and she moved as stiffly as a doll, her mouth working, but no sound coming out. Suddenly, the thing that had been Lieutenant Sutter clasped the young woman closely to him, and then he gave a signal to the musicians. Afterwards, the shaken men protested they did not know what they were doing, but at the corpse's command they began to play a waltz so strange and haunting in its melody that some people burst into tears upon hearing it, while others pressed their hands to their ears to keep out the sound. On the floor, the couple whirled around and around and around. Elizabeth could not take her gaze from the dead lieutenant's burning eyes, but she grew paler and paler. The musicians, possessed by some compulsion from beyond the grave, played faster and faster, until the music became so frantic that the spinning couple on the floor became a blur of pink skirts and blue uniform. And then the music slowed from a pace that no human could dance to, back to a waltz, and down to a dirge. The young woman hung limply in the corpse's arms. Her slack jaw and empty eyes showed that she was as dead as her partner. Gently, the dead man lowered her body to the floor, and for a moment he stood staring down at her. Then his eyes circled the horrified company. He threw back his head and gave the same fearful cry they had heard earlier. Then he turned and marched stiffly out into the driving wind and rain, while the doors of the mess hall slammed shut behind him. When the people could move again, Elizabeth's bridegroom rushed to her side, but his efforts to revive her were futile. The corpse had vanished into the storm that battered Fort Union for a day and a night. And several days later, a troop of soldiers, which had been sent to the scene of the earlier battle, located Frank Sutter's body where it lay at the bottom of a small gully, a single tomahawk gash across his brow. He was returned to the post and buried beside Elizabeth Bidwell in the little cemetery outside the fort. Poor Elizabeth. All she wanted was to get married and find somebody who could take her away from the frontier life. And on the same hand, congratulations to Lieutenant Sutter, who has proved them wrong once and for all in the fact that you can take it with you. I know it's a bad joke, I'm sorry. This is our budget and these are the jokes. Feel free to laugh when you get the chance. Anyway, I would like to extend a thank you to all of those who... What's that, Kai? Hold on a second, I'm getting an announcement. Okay, I would like to issue a formal congratulations to Travis from the Tesoro, who provided a song for us last week. Apparently, the local Chamber of Commerce was so taken with it, they've asked to speak with him on regards to some other musical issues. So congratulations to young Travis. I hope this turns into a most profitable venture for you. If you would like to have your music, your stories, or anything like that featured on our broadcast, please do not hesitate to submit it to us by email, storiesfromdarkplaces@gmail.com, or feel free to reach out to us over Twitter at storiesfromdar1, or you can pop into the comment section anywhere you find us. We'd very much like to hear from you. Anyway, that's all the time we have for now. Good night, listeners. And by the way, the next time you feel something tingling at the back of your neck, please remember, there's nothing to be afraid of. After all, some of the best things only happen in the dark.
Stories from Dark Places was recorded before an imaginary studio audience. All stories performed on this podcast have express written consent from the original author, Johnas, his studio manager, and the entire staff of WZHP Radio Innsmouth are fictitious characters, and it's probably for the best that you continue to believe that.